Exclamation, everybody. So, back with some more code review of the Open Vehicular Epic game. So, when we last left each other, I decided I wanted to make some sort of progress here, which for me was literally 5 minutes ago, but for you was probably a bit more time since the last episode. And because I need a win right now. My brain just is dying to have to win in some small capacity, and the best way I can think to do that is to tackle something like this. This is relatively self-contained to a point. So what we do normally is we have this concept of a resource bundle. And in my case, we'll be using a property resource bundle. Let me make this a little bit bigger for you guys so you can see it. A property resource bundle, which basically I need to open up a file with a reader, and the file has to be a .properties file. And in there, you have a message format like this. And these are the keys. These are the values. Basically, this maps to checkpoint, right? This would be key, and this would be value. And then you refer to everything throughout the app by its key, like you're doing here. They're referring to these things by their variable name. But what this does is it puts all this stuff out into a separate file in the operating system. And property bundles and resource bundles know how to handle different locales. So for instance, if I have a resource bundle, as they say here, you have a resource bundle called my resources. It'd be my resources.properties, right? If you then make a my resources underscore say de.properties, then that would be for Germany. And the resource bundle, the property resource bundle, knows based on your locale, which you believe you do give it a locale at some point, or at least it gets it from the system locale, whatever that's happens to be set to. I think you give it a locale when you say get bundle, resource bundle.get bundle. Yes, you give it a locale, and then it knows based on that locale what properties file to read. And it will read that and look at the keys and give you back the text in the appropriate language that you've asked for. The other nice thing about this is it has replacements. So when you see things like in the UI over here, where was that at? Options interface. So when you see things like this, where we're taking a string and then plussing and then appending another string to it, basically this whole string could just be in that properties file and just be with a double brackets 0, and then the 0 would get replaced with that value, and then that way it keeps everything nice and clean, and we don't have to go super crazy like this. It makes the code look a lot nicer. It's a lot more straightforward, things of that nature. So I like to start to get that set up, because like I said, I just need a win right now. This is kind of the wrong time to be doing it. Like, this is not something that needs to be done until much later, but I'm way down in the thickets, and every time I pull something apart, 900 other things are falling apart because they were all so tightly woven together that you're just trying to pull these pieces together, and every time you pull a little thread away, all these other threads fall out, and you just kind of have to bundle everything back together again, and then you end up going down one path and then having to come back up and go down another path. And it's just, at some point your brain just starts to shut down, and you're just like, I need something that's relatively self-contained that I can accomplish, so I know that I'm actually moving forward. Even though I am moving forward, it's just at a snail's pace. So that said, what we normally do is in this structure, and you see when I made the project structure, I have a source main folder. Normally, what you do is when you have something that's not a Java class, something that's going to be part of your ultimate application, but is not code, it's more of data. They have the concept of a resources folder. And so under source main here, I can make a folder called resources. I could have just called it I18N properties, I guess, too. It doesn't matter. External strings properties. That's good enough, I guess. It's good enough for what we're trying to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of that and fix it up so that it's not so special here. And I want to also make it so that it's we don't have clashes. So well, I guess we wouldn't have any clashes because it's these are all variable names. I guess that's the one good thing about it. So you can just say auto aim aerial only. So basically right now it's just getting rid of these commas and fixing this up. So let me do that real fast. Okay, I'm back, and it took a little bit, but I've sort of brought a little bit of changes here. First of all, I've introduced a bunch of categories, kind of, sort of. I do this mostly because you'll have things like, where was it at? Like this one, checkpoint, where it's this, and then they also had a capital C checkpoint, which, you know, would otherwise be clashing if I called them both checkpoints. And so I also wanted to try to categorize some things. A lot of these look like labels, although some of them look like buttons, so I kind of put the buttons up there, and the things that look like menu, maybe names, I put down here. We'll see if they actually are or not. We'll have to see how they're used in the game itself, in the game proper. And anything that had camel case or mixed case, like this one, I made all lowercase because it's just out of convention. It doesn't have to be. I could have left the case alone on them, but I decided to make the keys themselves all lowercase, so we don't have to worry about that as you're coding. You always know what it's going to be and where you're looking at. So this is your basic external properties file. The trick now is to read the file in, wrap a reader around it, and then try and actually read from it. In order to do that, I'll need a test, so I'm probably not going to be able to. I could test it. There's nothing that's particularly stopping me. I guess I could do a unit test just for this. That would be nice to at least start getting the unit test going, because this is a pretty self-contained thing per se. But let's make the actual logic around this now. And I think what I'm going to do is make a new package, and we're going to call it external strings, right? And under here, how do I want to do this? Well, I want this to load up. I kind of want to make it as much of a black box as I can per se. So we'll say we'll make a class, and we'll call it external strings. External string maybe. It's going to be a utility though, right? Kinda. Yeah, I guess I could do it without a utility. Let's do this at least. So I want what we need to do is we'll need to be able to put the locale in here, and keep it so we don't have to constantly pass the locale in, which right now will just default to US until we actually set it to something eventually. So what we'll do here is we'll say private locale Java util locale. I'll just set it to locale dot US as the default, and then we'll keep that for right now, and then I want the name, so I'll put the name of the file in here. Do I want to? I guess I can have, yeah, I guess we can put the name of the file in here. We don't need to necessarily be able to change the name of the file that we're loading. So we'll say private, actually I can make it public because it'll be constant public static final string file external strings file equals, and then we'll just say it's called external strings.properties. Okay, and I should be able to, this should get loaded onto the class path, I hope, because I've got it in the appropriate folder. So I should be able to do just a class path lookup for the external strings properties without needing to put, you know, the actual path in there, hopefully. We'll see if this works out. I haven't done a fat app in a long time. Usually I'm working on web apps which have a lot of built-in standards, shall we say. So external strings properties, I think, yeah, that seems right. And then I need a resource bundle. I need a property resource bundle. So it'd be private proper PERTY resource bundle. Resource bundle. I can't really initialize that right now. I'll just put that like that. It'll get initialized in the constructor. Should I do it in the constructor? There's always a debate, like, do you want to do it in the constructor, or, because a lot of times the more stuff you put in the constructor, the more likely it's going to fail really early, and you may not want it to fail initially because you might be waiting for something. So I think I'll probably have a load in here, a load method that we'll call, that will then say, you know, this is loaded or not. And I don't need to save the state of whether it's loaded. I think we can just say, like, before you use this, you should load it. I think we can make that a given. So that would be, let's try, because I want to load it up with the locale and everything too, although I'll put a load in here that doesn't take the locale. Well, no, the locale should probably be in the constructor, I would say, because you should know what locale you're. Well, that's not true. That's not necessarily true, because they can change their locale. In a perfect world, you'd be able to go into the options menu and change what locale you're set to, and that should just change everything immediately. So I guess rather than put in a constructor, I can just put a setter on here, and then it'll just be set whenever we need to set it. It'll default to US, but it'll be set whenever you need to set it. Seems reasonable. So then, and that way it's always, locale is always set to something anyway. So let's do public void load. And in here, I'm going to do, so I need to make a file call. Okay, so the base name is basically the name of the file without the dot properties. So it's bundle base name would be external strings. There we go. And then what I want to do here is I want to make this, instead of a property resource bundle, I just want to make it a resource bundle. Because you really want to use the interface whenever you can. Let's do that. And then, so this would be resource. So then get bundle returns a resource bundle, right? So I want to make sure resource bundle. Let's call this something else in here so that I set it properly, because I want to make sure it's getting set properly. So we'll say resources. So your resource bundle string external bundle equals that, and then resource bundle equals external bundle get bundle, and then the base name will be bundle base name. How does it know? This is actually throwing me for a little bit of a loop, because I've used resource bundles before, but I've used them in Spring and not separate from it. So I'm a little bit thrown here as to why that is static. Get bundle, base name locale, this class, get class loader. Security privileges, resource bundle, get bundle for a complete description of search engine. Base name locale returns a resource bundle for a given base name and locale. Sure. Class loader. This get class loader. Oh, I wonder if this actually loads it itself. Do I not need to do a constructor here from a reader? Unlike the constructor, property resource bundle, no limitation. Property file to read from. I wonder if I don't need to load this up like this. I mean, you'd think you would need to, but it knows the bundle base name, so it knows to look for a dot properties, and it looks like it's looking in the class loader for that resource, right? Because this says this is the equivalent to calling this.getClass loader, right? So if that's the case, then I probably don't need this. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens here. And it also means I wouldn't need the external strings file either, or any of these other things. But we can test this to see if this works out for me or not. And then once we have resource bundle, then what do I call on it to get a property? I have contains key. Okay. Get keys, get locale, get string. It's equivalent to calling get object. Get string array. Get bundle. Okay, so then it's just the equivalent of, so I just call get string, which is everything's going to be a string anyway. From that. Okay. All right. Let's see if this actually works. So I've set the resource bundle. Value of the field external string resource bundle is not used. I beg to differ. but well, it's not. It's set, but it's not used, is what they're saying. But then I'm going to put a project. Where is it at? Source. We want to generate getters and setters for the resource bundle. Actually, I just want a getter for it. Get a resource bundle. Do that. Actually, I don't even need to do that, do I? Because I don't have any need for the resource bundle. All I need is the string from it. So what we'll do instead of that, I'll make it even less high touch. We'll do public string get string, or get get string. That should work. And then we'll call string key. All right, and then I'll just say I guess what does let's see, resource return resource resource bundle that get string. So what happens if it doesn't exist? It throws a null pointer exception if key is null. Missing resource set exception if no object for a given key can be found, or if the object found for a given key is not a string, you get a class cast exception. All right, so I want to protect against those things. So what we're going to do is say if resource bundle that contains key, then we'll return resource bundle dot get string key there. Otherwise, we'll return just the key that was passed in. That should, and then that way I'll know whether or not it exists or not. If I get the key right back, something that says label dot something, then you know that it's not there. All right, that's all seems rather reasonable at the moment. Well, let's see if this actually works, because that'd be fun if that's just all I had to do was just do that and say bundle base name, because I vaguely remember that being the case, but sometimes you never know. Sometimes things are really heavy-handed in Java, and you gotta really load things up from the class loader and stuff. But let's just see what happens. We have that there. What I need to do is make a test, a JUnit test, which means we need the JUnit libraries, which I have access to JUnit libraries in Eclipse, so I might just snarf them as an Eclipse resource right now and worry about bringing them down as an actual resource later. So in order to do that, I'm going to say properties and libraries, and I'm going to say add library, and I'm going to say JUnit here. JUnit 5 is fine. Do that. So what I've done is added that as a dependency only in Eclipse. In order for that to work for other people, I eventually have to have a build that brings in JUnit and all that stuff. I'm not worried about that at the moment. Now, so that means we need another file folder here. So that's going to be under source. So we're going to do new folder, and we're going to do test. You have source main, and then you have source test, and we'll do finish on that. And just for argument's sake, I'm going to put a resources folder in here in case I needed it. So, well, I don't need it right now. Yeah, I don't need it right now. Screw it. Okay, source test. So we got source test here, and then I'm going to make a. So do I? Yeah, I put test as a source folder, right? In order for that to work, properties. Where are we at? Java build path. and source and add folder and test and OK and apply and close. There we go. So that should have put it up around here somewhere. Here it is, source test. All right, and then we'll do a new class. Nope, not class. New package, and we'll call it Ryan Albano. Did I do that? I think so. .ve .test. That's what we'll call it, because everything that's test we'll put under a test. Yeah, that's fine. VE.test, because I eventually want to move these things out of this base VE, maybe something else. It doesn't matter. It can be under test as long as it's something different. And then I think I can just say new JUnit test case, right? Yep, that's what I can do. And what we want to test is, oh, actually, I wanted to have the same package as, let's cancel that for a second, of where I'm actually testing. I want to keep the packages at least somewhat in sync. So I want a, where did I put this at? I put it under external strings. So we'll do new package external strings here. Cool. Now I'll do a new JUnit test case, and we'll do external string test. I don't think I do need, I'll probably need a setup. Yeah, I'll need a setup. And we're class under test will be external string. There we go. And JUnit Jupyter test. Ooh. Last thing I've used is JUnit 4, so JUnit Jupyter is going to be, we'll see what that's all about. Finish should do it. All right. Before each setup. Oh, actually, yeah, I guess before each. I guess that would be a before each to set up there. All right, so the setup before each. Actually, I only needed to set it up once, so it really should be before class, right? Before class, yeah. I'll just call this init. Throws exception, okay. And we'll go and call, so I want to private external string, external strings. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We'll do that. And I'll say external strings equals new external string. And then external strings dot load. Right. It's all nice and loaded up. With the default, that's before class. It actually probably should happen between each test, because I'd want to test at some point the loading up different locales. So yeah, it should, that was actually right before tests, before each. Yeah, it was right before. It should be before each. right? And then we're doing a load there. Yeah, and then actually the load probably shouldn't happen until the test itself, because we'd want to load different different things into it, like different locales, most likely. Did I put a set locale on there? That's a good question. I did not. Refactor, or source, I mean, generate getters and setters, set locale. There we go, because that's kind of important. Actually, it's quite important. Yeah. Yeah, so then we don't really want to do the load here. We want to do that for each test, because we'll want to have tests that eventually do different locales. All right, so for the test, we want to do test basic lookup, I'll call it, and we'll do external strings dot set locale, and we'll do locale dot us. Actually, yeah, we'll do it as test default basic lookup. We'll set that later. Let's just do external strings dot load, and then I want to say string lookup equals external strings, or lookup value, external strings dot get string, and then we gotta give it one of the keys that I put in this file here. So we'll just say we'll say button.end, just for the sake of argument. String button.end there. Oh, to the end of that. All right, and then I want to do, so it's fail automatically fails. You want to do an assert assert true, assert that, I guess it is, right? Now assert equals. Yes, assert equals. Where's this? It does have a string one, right? Short byte expected. Double. I don't know if it takes a string or not. It takes an object. It's not really what I'm looking for. Oh, here it is. Assert equals string message long. That's if you want to give a different message. Assert same for the same object. No, assert equals. I don't think it's going to like this, because isn't there a string comparison? Let's see what happens. Assert equals look. It would be button.end should equal end. Lookup value. I don't know if it's going to take strings or not. It seems to take strings, but we'll see if that's correct in that. And that's the test default basic lookup, and then we can test the basic lookup, and what I'll do is I'll load in external strings dot set locale. Excuse me. And we'll say locale dot, just for the sake of argument, we'll say Germany. Constant for language, for country. I'll just say German. Locale dot German. Test German basic lookup, we'll just say here. And then we'll still look for button.end. In this case, it'll still equal end because I haven't overridden that, but we can always test to see what that is in German. So let's just do this for right now. I'm just going to assert equals that it's end and not something else, namely button.end. And I think that will work. Let's see if we can run this. Run as JUnit test. Yeah, it might not let me. It might let me. Let's see. Let's see if it lets me. There was a null pointer exception on load. Oh, you know what? Let's, for the sake of argument, let's comment these out and see if I actually need them. Let's do that, and let's rerun this test. Proceed. Unresolved compilation problems, yeah. Oh, these aren't, oh, right, because this is an unreachable block now. IO exception is unreachable now too? Really? This doesn't throw any exceptions? Am I just being dense here? Throws null pointer or missing resource exception. Okay, well, let's just catch plain old exception E here. And do it that way. All right. Can't find bundle for base name external strings. Locale en us. Missing resource exception. I think I know what that is, actually. And that has to do with Eclipse. Because what I got to do, properties. I believe I got to put the resources on the class path. Is our Java build path resource? Where is that? Linked resources. Resource filters. I believe, yeah, I believe it has to be on the resource path for Eclipse to see it. So do I put that under libraries? Where would I tell it to put that? That is the question right now. Can I add it as a class folder? There's a whole other folder here that I need to fix up. I think we have to fix the things here. I might do this. Nesting source folders. Not modular. Let's see what it does about that. I'm not sure. Is it going to mess up the way it looks? Because that's going to be annoying if it does. Source main. I don't actually see it on here. Let's try and bring some sanity back to some of this. Source test, reference library, source main resource. This should put it on the class path, although it might not be the correct way to do it, but let's just see if that works. And it does. Cool, because we got green here. All right. Like I said, once we have it where I'm not just configuring it in Eclipse, it'll actually configure it properly. But that means that those lookups worked properly. So if I look at that test again, where is the test at? External string test. So this one here, we want to change this. So I want to go under the resources folder again. If I can find it. Here it is. All right. And what I'm going to do, is, let's open this up. And I'm just going to take this guy. Just that guy. I don't need to take all of them. And I'm going to say new file. And we're going to say external strings de.properties. Finish that in there, and I'm going to change the word end to whatever the German equivalent of it is. So I guess I should look that up, huh? End in German. It's just end. It's just end. Hopefully. Is that finish ending clonate? Okay. Yeah, der Zweck. It's one of those. I'm sure it's close enough. So we'll make this say that. Not all that, and I guess I'll make it I guess I'll capitalize it like the other one. Maybe. All right, so then we have that property file there. So then if I run this unit test, I should get an error because it won't be equal. Let's see. Proceed. Yes, test German basic lookup. Expectation failed. Expected end, but was end with an E. So we know that that's working now. Sweet. So then I can go fix the test so that the test is actually correct. So it should be that. Save it. Run it. And now it's green. Excellent. See, this is what I really needed. I needed some kind of win. I needed to feel good about what I'm doing. Because I don't feel good about what I'm doing under normal circumstances. So what that means is now we have this, we have the externalized strings subsystem done. So everywhere in the system where we're making reference to like this SL enum can now actually make reference to the external string class, which is something that will have to be loaded up at the start of the what's it, and then we'll have to expand it a little bit further because we have all these things under user interface here that should really go in there. Feet, kilometers, kph, all that stuff. So all that should go in there at some point. We'll have to have a way to look it up and get an instance of it. So that's the other thing I haven't done yet, which is right now there's no way to easily get a singleton of this. unless I change the code, which we're going to change anyway because I got to get rid of these comments because it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And get rid of this external strings file because that's not used. I'm just using the bundle base name, which is even more fantastic. So that's good. So what that brings us to then is, what are we going to do about singletons and stuff? Now, I could bring in a dependency injection framework like Spring. That might be a bit heavy-handed for what we're trying to do, or what this game is trying to be. You're trying to keep the game at least somewhat independent, somewhat basic, and Spring has a lot of third-party dependencies that you have to bring in, and you really need a build system to do it because you're going to have to bring, like I said, lots and lots of jars down and all that stuff. So in the meantime, we could do something that doesn't require any of that, and that is having a static method that would give us, basically having a builder, essentially, that would give us an external string that is just one instance. So once the instance is built, we have it, and we don't need to do anything else with it. If every time we want to get it, we can just get it through, we can get a reference to it. So easiest way to do that is to make a static method and call that directly. So what I'm going to do here is say public static. Do I need to make it final? No, it doesn't need to be final. I mean, making it final means that you can't extend it. If you were to extend external string, I don't think that's that big a deal. So public static get instant public static external string get instance here, and then up here we need a reference to ourselves that is also static. Yeah. I'm trying to roll it all around in my brain here. Do I do a static method block? That's a good question. Usually you would do a static block, right? And then you set it to that. So that way you always have an instance here. So it would be static, and then right, so we do private external string instance, right, and then it's instance -tance equals new external string. Am I doing this right? I don't feel like I'm doing this right. This actually has to be private static because this is static. Yeah, instance, get instance. So then that's just this dot instance, or I'm sorry, return this dot return instance. Yes, know this because it's a static. So that gets us a static instance of it. We spin up a static instance of it here when the class is actually loaded. The caveat with this is, well, we have a locale, so we have some state, but we're only instantiating an object. We're not actually loading anything, which is what means that we're not going to fail with it, right? But it does mean that if they change the locale, they're going to change it for everything, which is exactly what we want. If they reload it, it's reloading it for everyone, which is exactly what we want, because there's only going to be one instance of this ever in the system, because you don't want multiple instances floating around, and that's hence becomes what we call a singleton. You want a single instance of it. So then basically at this point, whenever we want an external string, we would call the static methods. So Or you could also spin up one of your own, like I was doing in the tests. But I want the tests to be reflective of what we're actually going to be doing. So since I'm doing it that way, then I can get rid of this, basically both of these, right? And I can then, for each test, we'll just say external strings equals external string, dot get instance. It's just a single external string. There we go. And basically do that for all of these. And since it's static, we're not going to get the, we're getting the same thing each time we go through. But I am calling load every time. So that should work out for us. So I should be able to just run this JUnit test and it should still be green. And it is. Okay, so I did that right. Hey, we did it right. Right, so that is now reflective of how we want to do this. So from this point forward, whenever we want the external strings, we just have to get an instance of it and make sure it's loaded. That will most likely happen, well, it'll happen from the options menu because we'll probably add an option that says what locale you're on. Although for right now, the default is US, and we'll just I'll probably just keep it as US. So under the options, it'll be more like, it'll be more like, I'll have to put a locale in there, but I'll set it to, I'll just set it and not actually set it. Yeah, I'll default it to US, but then not actually have any way for users to set it, at least not initially. And then that way you don't run into, I mean, it doesn't actually matter because you could have it in the options menu and have it set, and then they could set it to whatever you support, whatever locales you have in the options menu. And if there's no properties file for that locale, it'll default back to the main properties file without anything in it. So that's why when I did this file here, I only put this one here. If I then call, and in fact, this is a good test. If I go in here and I say, let's try void test unknown lookup. So if I try to look up something that doesn't exist for what I'm trying to do, external strings equals this, get instance, external strings dot load, right? And then I say string lookup value equals external strings dot get string, and we'll just say unknown doesn't exist, like that, right? And then based on the code that I wrote, I should get that key back, that exact key back. So then I'm going to do an assert equals, and we're going to say it's going to equal this, right? It's not going to find it. And that's the lookup value. And then to be extra certain, that's actually test defaults unknown lookup, and then do the same thing. We'll do it with the German language. So you see that it actually does what you expect. Test German, and that should be the same, only it's got to set the locale. right, like that. And then what I'll do, I can put a test in here for something that I want it to fall back on. I guess what we'll do is, so I have a fallback, we'll say, we'll just put a dummy in here and we'll say fallback, or let's do test.fallback, fallback test, or used by tests, used by unit tests. Right, and we'll just do that. And what I can say then is, if I go over here, I can then do, actually, I'm going to have to recopy that anyway. I can test a German fallback lookup, right? And I can go looking for that key, which is in external strings.properties, right? Go for here, but it's not in the German properties. And I should still see, I shouldn't see this come back, I should see this come back, even though I'm setting the language to German. It should find that it's not in this file and fall back to the main file. And so I should get back that string, right? There we go. All right, and run. Oh, we did get an error. What did I get here? Assertion fail, expected end, but was end. Didn't I fix that? Whoops. Didn't I fix this? Default basic lookup. Is that the one that failed? Tests. Default basic lookup has failed? I believe I know why. Because we have a singleton now. Yes. Because we have a singleton now, it was still set to, it ran, so what JUnit does, and this is kind of the genius of JUnit, is it doesn't always run your tests in the same order. It actually randomizes the order of your tests. So you can see it actually ran, this is the first test declared in here, but it actually ran the German test first because it likes to randomize the order, because that way it'll detect things like this, which is what I just screwed up, right? Because I've switched over to a singleton, this is why I like JUnit so much. Because I switched over to a singleton, I now can't rely on the default being US like I was before. It's now still set to German because I'm getting the same, because this German test ran first. So now you got to actually set it to what is appropriate for it. So let's do test US basic here. So external strings dot set locale dot US. Now I could do it this way, or I'd have to do it this way, or I have to change my tests to not use the singleton, which is not really what I want to do. I want them to be using the right stuff. So let's just do that. And it doesn't really help me to test it in a non-singleton instance, because I'm not going to be using it in a non-singleton instance. All right, so let's make sure we do this right, friends. Let's make sure we do it right. This is, again, that's one of the genius things that the developers of JUnit put in there was like, every so often we'll just swap around your tests. We'll run your tests in a random order to make sure that one test is not dependent on the setup of another test. And if it is dependent on the setup of another test, then you better have an init like they had in there before, where it says before class and all that stuff. So technically speaking, I could get around this by having that in there and having the init always set the locale to US, and then once the test comes in, it would set the locale to German or whatever else. But we want this to be a more or less legitimate test, so we want to be able to set the locale to what we want, and now you can see everything succeeded, as I said, and this one then did in fact fall back and give me used by unit tests back instead of test.fallback. So you can see that now we know that everything is working. The fallback is working. If a key is not found in here, it will fall back to default, which is back in here. So if I ask for a label.thrust and the locale is set to German, it'll end up going back here and giving it to me in English, which is what we want because English is the default. And that is why you can safely, even though you don't have it actually translated into other languages, you could safely put other languages into the options menu and it'll just work. So that's what's cool about that, and rather awesome. And then the idea is then at some point in the future, you could give these properties files, you give your property file, your external strings properties, to a translator and say, leave the keys the same. Everything that's in green, all this stuff that's in green here, after the equal sign, translate that to whatever language you need. Leave the keys alone, and you just plug that file back in, and no code changes necessary. Everything just starts to work. So, and if they miss a few, then it will fall back to the English. You'll just see some things in German and some things in English that fell back on there. So that's what is fantastic about this. One of the things I like about how they do internationalization stuff in Java. They don't do a lot of stuff in Java right, but they do a few things rather well. Oh, so that was a success, I would say. I managed to get some unit tests going in here, which is going to be very, very useful as we go forward, especially make sure I'm testing things and making sure I get values back that I expect. We've got external strings going, so as we go through our classes, I can start to externalize some things, make the code look a little bit cleaner as we go. Still have to fix all the compile errors, but the nice thing about this is, since I've got JUnit, I can test things as unit tests. I can test them in isolation. I don't necessarily need the entire system compiling. I just need the parts that I need compiling. So I just need the class that I'm testing compiling, as you saw here, which is nice because now I can test things piecemeal as we go. And then once everything is building, I can get a build system in here. The build system will automatically run the tests for me at build time, and the entire test suite, and we'll be in a much better spot once I get everything, all the code actually compiling again. We'll be in a much better spot. But this has been enough for this episode. I have been coding this thing all day long. I've been just kind of stuck. I've not stuck, but I've had a brain worm, and my brain worm has been I need to make something happen here. So I've actually, the first 3 episodes of this series I've recorded all on the same day, which is why I'm wearing the same clothes, and also why I'm rather tired right now, because I started at I think noon, and it's now 9:15 at night. I haven't been going all the way through, but I've been doing most of my time. I did stop for a couple hours for lunch and stuff, or dinner. So it's not like I went all the way through. But you can see this would have been basically an 8-hour day, and this is what it would have gotten done in an 8-hour day. And now you can see like how little progress development why development runs at such a snail pace, because it's just a lot of stuff to do. And that's also why there's so many, like you'll encounter a lot of people, if you're a developer, you'll encounter a lot of other developers that are very unkind when you do things wrong the first time through, because it requires this much time in rework. I am not one of those. I'm understanding enough that nobody ever gets anything right the first time at all. It takes a lot of experience to do things well, and even then you're going to screw up a few things here and there and do things non-optimally and then realize, crap, I should have done this completely different. It would have been a lot better if I did this way. 'Tis the nature of the beast. It is more, at times, more art than actual science. So, but I'm happy that I've gotten at least something working here. As our final hurrah here, though, let's not final hurrah, but the final action for this episode, we're gonna do a local commit. We have some unstaged changes. These are all good. We're gonna add all of them. So here's all our staged changes here, and we're gonna make a commit message, and it's gonna be started cleaning up broken code, got message bundles and bundles to work, got initial initial JUnit tests framework going. Why did that go onto, what is wrong with this thing? Second line should be empty to separate commit message header from body. What? What is it doing? What you doing to me? What you doing to me? I don't know what you're doing to me. Cool. Yeah, that sounds about right about what we did. So just going to commit locally, not going to commit and push. It's not going to let me push anyway because I don't have push permissions, but I'm going to do at least a commit local. Bam. So that is now in my local staging, which is my local staging. It's very helpful here. It tells you I am 3 ahead of master. That's the arrow up, meaning I have 3 commits in front. I'm 3 commits in front of master. That helps later on when you're looking at things and you're like, wait, what's how far out of sync am I with the master branch? And it'll tell you like, hey, there's been like 2 commits, and it'll say 2 down and 3 up, and then you know, oh, okay, I got to go and resync with what's out there. And it's usually pretty good about that. Although in my case, it's going to be really rough. If there's if they make changes out there, the merge is going to be, shall we say, the worst because I've moved things all over the place, and I'm going to have to like manually look at what has changed and what hasn't. Knowing me though, it's going to take so long to do all this stuff. There's going to be a lot of changes I'm going to have to end up catching up to at some point. I'm not going to worry about it right now. Not going to worry about it at the moment. At the moment, I am going to do what I can and start getting these videos edited and put up when I can do it. So until then, thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I hope to see you in the next episode.